about 5 seconds. And great, it looks like we are on live and on schedule to get started today. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 21st edition of RBCM at Home. My name is Kim Goff and I'm a learning program developer at the Royal BC Museum. I hope everyone is doing well and finding ways to take care of themselves however you need it. I'm coming to you from my home on the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people in Esquimalt. Like many of you, staff from the museum has been asked to work at home during this pandemic. And in this series, we explore what that looks like. And today, we are celebrating National Volunteer Week. We have with us Holli Hodgson, the Volunteer Services Manager at the Royal BC Museum, and some of the museum's fantastic volunteers. We have Pierson, Laurie Roach, and Brian Shaughnessy. But let's start with you, Holli. Holli, what does volunteering mean to you?
Well, hi, everybody. I also just want to say happy National Volunteer Week to everybody watching, our volunteers and our future volunteers as well who've been invited. To me, it's been part of my life since I was a young child. I am a lifelong volunteer. I'm completely supportive of contributing to our community. And I have supported my children's schools and sports teams for many years, over 20. And prior to that, I did some volunteering in my youth as well.
Great. So tell us some more about the history of the museum's volunteer programs. How long has the museum had volunteers?
Well, we have had volunteers since 1886, believe it or not. When we had our first curator and CEO, John Fannin, he was supported by a group of experts in mostly in the collection areas. And we now today have a team of up to 600 volunteers. And at any given time, we could have 50 volunteers on site or virtually volunteering for us, actually.
Oh yeah, virtually volunteering. So is that taking place right now?
Yes, it is. It was taking place before. We have e-volunteers, some that work in other countries and support us, and some that work locally. And some of the work is being done electronically right now. And we're finding ways in other areas where we didn't maybe have so much of that type of volunteer work going on, finding ways to bring that in, which is a positive that's really come out of this.
Yeah, Holli, tell us a little bit more about what's happening with volunteers at the museum right now, given our current situation.
Well, we've just hit the 1 month mark. So it was quite a process. It happened quickly, and we had to close our doors for business, obviously, and ask our volunteers to stay home and staff. So in the meantime, we have reached out to our volunteers. We are keeping in touch with them through communications coming from right from our CEO to the individual sponsors. And I have reached out to volunteers, and I'm going to launch a program where volunteers have agreed to connect with other volunteers and check in on them as well. So that's something new that's in the works.
Well, that's really lovely. That's a great idea.
Well, it's important right now.
And I know at this time of year with National Volunteer Week, this is typically a time of year where you've done a lot of recognition. So how is that looking now? How is that going forward?
Well, our volunteers, there was up to almost 150 volunteers who would be receiving Milestone Awards, and our scheduled date was actually tomorrow, and an Emeritus Long Service Tea, which was going to be following the next day. So those events have been paused. Reach out, thanks to you actually, Kim, and your expertise with Doodle Poll. And we got some information from our volunteers on how they would like to see recognition happen to them when it does happen again. And the highest response was they'd like to just see the events that were happening this year happen at a later time, even if that meant next year, just when it's safely possible.
So if folks had been able to join us tomorrow, It's the volunteer appreciation is always a really special event. And for people who've never been to it, Holly, can you tell us just folks a little bit about some of those Milestone Awards, like how many years people have volunteered at the museum and what some of those big markers are?
Absolutely. We were going to, tomorrow, we'd be officially saying farewell to some of our volunteers who would join the Emeritus program. These are people who have actually contributed over the years, anywhere between 10 and 30 plus years of service to the organization. We had one volunteer who is receiving a 45-year milestone award tomorrow, another one receiving a 30-year award. So those were our two highest. And I would like to say congratulations to both June and Mavis, who are the recipients of those awards.
45 years, Holly? 45 years?
45.
That's amazing to
I know.
be.
Older than most of us, Kim.
Have we had anyone have 45 years before or higher?
This is the highest. 45 years. Yeah, it's the highest one we've seen yet. Yeah, we've had a 40-year recipient, and right after she received 40, she became part of the Emeritus family. Yeah, and we had about 10% of our recipients are youth volunteers under the age of 19, and yeah, there was 1 year all the way up to 45 in 5-year increments.
That's fantastic. I worry you might hear my dog bark here, so I'm going to acknowledge that there's a little dog in the house if you hear something. A squirrel has caught his eye, I believe.
Oh.
So 45 years, and you said we have 600 volunteers at the museum, and we have some of those active volunteers joining us today, which is fantastic. And they are from all different areas of the museum. And because I recognize her face, I'm going to go to Laurie Roach first. Laurie, welcome. Thanks for coming today. Laurie, do you want to? Sorry about that. Laurie, why don't you tell us how long you've been at the museum and what you do there?
So I've been at the museum now as a volunteer for just about 15 years. I think it's 14 and a little bit. I decided that as soon as I retired from teaching, that was the one thing that I really wanted to do, and I ended up on the doors of the museum on the first day of school of the day that I didn't teach, and started doing work. Started doing work at the museum and have been doing it ever since.
Your first day of retirement, Laurie?
My first day of retirement I remember that vividly, actually. But the reason that I wanted to volunteer was because I still liked working with people. Just because I didn't teach in the schools anymore didn't mean that I wasn't interested in still continuing with working with people, and it's still a total passion, and I'm practically going into remission here for in my isolation and not being to work with people at the museum and see people all the time, especially working with children and smaller groups to help with them. The other thing that I really have enjoyed tremendously is working as a team member on the team with both professionals like yourselves and the learning department, and then all the other volunteers that are with me. It's a family group when you finally get to know everybody that's there, and you work, and sometimes you work together for quite a long time and they become really good friends. So that's really important. And the other thing is that it also has pushed me to do some exploring of some areas of interest that I probably wouldn't have gone into before. I kind of gravitate to the natural history section of the museum, but so I've had to really work hard at saying, yeah, there's other things in the museum, and I've found out about them and done some of the training, and I've really enjoyed pushing myself to areas that normally I wouldn't have before. So that's what I'm really enjoying doing.
Yes, that lifelong learning, I think, is something that all of our volunteers have in common. They want to continue learning, and being at the museum can be a great way to do that. So, Laurie, you're part of the learning team. So,
Yes.
as a volunteer, you mentioned some work with school groups
Yeah.
and working with people who are visiting the gallery. And if you visit the Royal BC Museum, it's probably that type of volunteer you're most accustomed to seeing there, hosting a station in the exhibitions, or they're leading a tour, or they're helping.
See us with our vests on, and we do the tours that people take across in the museum, just the regular tours. And I'm also a member of the team that takes people around to the behind the scenes tour of the insect collection. So I have my bee hat. And so we go back into the Fannin Tower and show people some of the different collections back in there. They take place in the summertime, just about once a week, which is great. And then I've also done pretty well all of the major exhibits that come along, the special exhibits like the Maya that just was here. And I'm really looking forward to the Orca exhibit that comes. Let's cross our fingers that that gets going. And then there's also all the school programs that we do. And part of the trailhead tours, where we are up in the galleries and assist the school groups that come through with exploring the gallery a little bit more, looking at it in a different way, trying to find different ways of connecting with some of the work that's up in the galleries. So lots of different kinds of things. In 14 or 15 years, you tend to wander into different parts of the museum in different times. So, but my favorite,
sorry, your favorite
is definitely still the tide pool.
Getting your fingers all pruny in the tide pool. So actually the tide pool is a nice segue to Kara Pierson. Although you don't see Kara in the galleries at the tide pool, when you take one of your behind the scenes tours that Laurie and others so kindly lead to our collections area, that's where volunteers like Kara are working. And Kara has been doing some work in the invertebrate zoology collection, and also just recently in botany. Kara, tell us what attracted you to working in that area of the museum.
I actually ran into Heidi at a lecture and approached her and asked her if she needed any help.
And Heidi Gardner is the collection manager for invertebrate zoology.
Yeah. And I ran into her, and she said that I could come in and have a little tour, look around, and I thought it looked like a pretty neat space. It's like a full lab that she has going down there. So I started working there, and I really enjoy it. It's great.
And what do you do for her down there?
I organize dead animals in little jars. Yeah, like kind of just making sure that the collection is in good condition, and maintaining that, and like reorganizing any that are not as organized as they might be. Yeah.
And what sort of skills does a volunteer doing that need to bring to the position?
I would say attention to detail would be the big thing to do in the invertebrates lab. Like there's a lot of samples down there, like lots of them. So keeping organized and like paying attention to every number that you come across and every code. Yeah.
Tell us some of the odd things that you've encountered down there. You must have seen some unusual beings.
Yeah, there's some things down there that you wouldn't think were alive at any time in the past, but I found a sample that was from the 1800s, which I thought was pretty cool. Pretty old sea creature. Some of the coral samples are in really big jars, like huge jars. They're not that big, but they're a lot bigger than I kind of would have thought that we'd keep corals in. And they're also really hard to reorganize the shelves to fit them in the right area because they're, big.
Yeah, so much of what a museum does is behind the scenes. A lot of, if folks just visit a gallery, they have no idea that often they don't have an idea about the collection and the work that it takes. And so volunteers like Kara working in the collection make it so much better and give an important helping hand to our collection managers. So Kara, you've been in the invertebrate area for a while, and now you're looking more at botany. What opportunity or why were you drawn to go there as well?
Well, I have a background in environmental science generally, and I am looking to get into a career in I'm not really sure, but in botany maybe, or in environmental protection. So I kind of wanted a more varied experience. And the botany lab is kind of underhanded, or I mean, not underhanded. Like they don't have enough people to help as much. So I thought they might need some more help. And yeah, and I kind of was just curious what they're up to. So I got myself working in their area to see what they're up to. Yeah, I also volunteer right now. I'm doing some stuff for Heidi on like some digital mapping as well. So I am still volunteering now, which is kind of nice. Nice to do something helpful now.
Oh yeah, that's really excellent. And I think it's fantastic that people are able to go between departments. Laurie mentioned being able to do that, you as well, and as a way of even exploring potential maybe interests for a career. It's such a great way. I know I started working in the museum over 20 years ago because I volunteered in one. So I started as a volunteer. And in fact, I didn't even know you could work in museums. I liked them, but I'd only ever seen volunteers and security guards. So I didn't know there were actual jobs. And that's really how I got started. And, 23 years later, I'm so happy I volunteered. Brian, what brought you to volunteering at the Royal BC Museum?
Retirement. That was not unlike Laurie. The day after I retired, I had started to target a few organizations within Victoria that I really felt I wanted to get involved with and give my support to, and also learn a lot about what they did within the community. And I have been a guest at the RBC Museum for about 25 years. Traveling to Victoria as a tourist for years and years, and never missed our visit to the museum. And I thought it would be just an amazing place to, I thought, work, volunteer, help out. I wasn't really sure where I was going to end up until I hooked up with Holly, and she pointed me in a certain direction that's been working out really, really well. I have lots of fun. I'm a lobby host once a week, and I also help out with CoCheck. I'm on a member of our leadership group that meets about once a month, and there's a group of about 10 of us that gather together a lot of feedback from all the volunteers in the museum and look at how we can better enhance the guest experience and make sure that everything that we're doing, in a lot of cases, it's their first approach or person that they see when they come through the museum is these wonderful museum hosts or greeters, as we're called. And, our goal primarily is to just set them up for the visit so that they know where they're going, whether it's to the museum, whether it's to IMAX, answer lots of questions. We tend to be a little bit of a concierge service, similar to our information desk as well. And just really make sure that everyone enjoys their visit at the museum. And I come from a retail background, so my entire career was working with people and being outgoing and communicating, and there's no better place to do that than at the museum.
That front of house position is so important when you walk into a new museum or a new place and you're trying to figure out what to do and where to go. That first greeting can have such an impression on you. It tells you if you're welcome. It tells you if it's safe. It tells you, how you might want to spend your time. And I'm so glad we've got a great, strong front of house team, including you there, Brian. But you mentioned also part of the leadership team. Who else is on the leadership team? Is that just front of house volunteers?
No, we have a cross-section of volunteers from the learning team. We have the info booth, we've got CoCheck, and we have a couple of board members. I'm also on the volunteer board. So there's a really good cross-section of folks that are on this group that meet, so that as we receive feedback on a monthly basis, that can be concerns, that can be ways to improve, it can be just about everything soup to nuts. Some meetings are very interesting. We've got a good cross-section of people that really represent all the volunteers in their positions, either front of the house or throughout the different areas within the museum as well. So it's really beneficial, and we find that we we get a lot done in a small group, and then we take it all to Holly and she has to execute it, you know. But,
Holly, do you have any examples of some recent suggestions that have come from the volunteers?
Well, just they really bring forward some great suggestions around consistency, training, professionalism, and really giving our visitors the absolute best experience. One thing I really want to mention too that you didn't, Brian, was that the front of house leadership team was instrumental in helping to pick out our new uniform. And Brian, with his retail background, he did spend countless hours working with the group, as well as visitor experience manager Alex Weaver, and that was critical in us getting a wonderful looking new look for the front of house team, which consists of up to 150 volunteers.
and that was an exciting experience, I have to tell you.
Well, you were in your element and you did a wonderful job, and you spent countless hours and had a great background experience, you and your team. It was amazing.
Yeah, we had fun doing it, and you know, it was challenging because everybody's got different points of view in regards to, you know, what a presentation or a uniform or an image should be. And, you know, we had to be very true to our brand and very true to the museum when we were putting our outfits together, and at the same time ensuring that people were really comfortable wearing what we were offering. So it took a bit of time, but the end result, I think everyone was pretty pleased. And when people walk through the door, they see consistency, and they see people, you know, really without having to look for a sign, they can kind of find us pretty easily. Just, you know, look for the blue shirts and the black vests, right? Not to be confused with the learning team.
No, because Laurie's representing that look actually right now.
Right.
Yeah, I've got mine on too, but it does small letters, learning team. But I hope, you know, I think it does show. I like that there's that consistency, because we are all there for the visitor and and getting it across. So one of the things about volunteers is that you give your time, and often to many organizations, and during a time like this, I'm curious if you've had other experiences volunteering, or if any of you are doing something else or thinking of other ways to help. Holly mentioned that terrific initiative for the museum to have volunteers connecting and reaching out. Kara mentioned she's doing some e-volunteering. Are there any other examples of what people are doing right now?
Well,
I think there's an awful lot of Zoom meetings going on, that's for sure.
Yes, I live on Zoom. Yes, yeah.
4 weeks ago, I had no idea what Zoom was, but you know, I'm involved with Harborside Rotary as well. So, you know, we're challenged right now. We do a lot of fundraising throughout the year, a lot of activities. I'm on the fundraising committee there as well. So, you know, one of our challenges right now is, you know, what's that look like in the next 3, 6, 9 months, next summer, and how we're going to continue to be able to raise funds through activities in the community so that we can then turn around and support the community. So that's quite a challenge right now. You know, and I also in the summer do volunteer work at Government House as well as a greeter, and you know, sort of greet folks when they come through to just visit the grounds and see the gardens, etc. So lots going on out there, but just very differently than what we're used to. And as Laurie mentioned, you know, every Monday my calendar still pops up and tells me I'm supposed to be at the museum, and you know, it's tough because we're so used to being there, and we're so used to seeing everybody that we volunteer with, and also, you know, the guests when they come through. But through a lot of the communication that's going on through Holly and Alex and yourself, you know, we're keeping in touch, and that's really important for us. So it's great.
There's on the chat, there's Vanessa has said she misses everyone at the museum and looks forward to coming back as well. What is something you're each looking forward to doing when we're allowed to go back to the museum? Kara, maybe I'll start with you. What's something you're looking forward to?
I think more than anything, looking forward to having a set schedule again. I think that will be really good for keeping your life interesting, is having something to look forward to doing, kind of. Yeah, I would say that's the consistency is what I'll look forward to the most.
Well, for me, it's just getting back to being with people and groups of people and talking with everybody. And it's amazing how those routines and those projects that we were involved in, the tours at certain times, they filled in part of your week. They were kind of a structure within your week. And when those get taken away, as Brian said, it comes up, pops up on your phone, and then nope, you're not doing that today. But I also find that that with another organization that I work with is the Royal Astronomical Society, and we've had to just very quickly, as you did as well at the museum, is just flip right into digital mode. And so there's been a real learning curve for lots of people of getting into the learning curve, whereas the museum already had the digital format and the structure of that. You had lots online. There's still so much to see. I never ever get through everything that the museum ever has. But whereas other organizations didn't have that and had to really, do some hard work at getting on digitally. It's been good. It's been good in that way. But the museum was well ahead of many of the other organizations in having a digital platform in which to pull all of it. Just to tell everybody that's watching, there's so much to see on the website and on the learning portal. Go there and get consumed into a black hole.
See why we love our volunteers. They're always such great ambassadors for the museum and the work that we do. Holly, what are you going to do when you get back to the museum?
You know what, I've given that a bit of thought. I was thinking, from being so contained within these walls of my home, I'm going to be looking forward to more going out and connecting with the volunteers in their positions. I think that's a goal I'm really looking forward to doing, because we've been restricted during this time, and now it'll give us the opportunity of just to sort of interact a little bit more in that way. Human interaction, of course, safely and with distance precautions, right?
Mm-hmm. And Brian?
I think much of the same. I look forward to showing up Monday mornings, going into the volunteer lounge. I always find that that's kind of the chat room before we, go out into the real world. And I tend to get there a bit early. And a lot of volunteers from a lot of different areas of the museum are there, and we just kind of chatted up and how was your week and what are you planning this week, etc. And then all of a sudden the bell rings and we all go running out to our shifts. And we see a whole whole other group of volunteers that we've maybe seen virtually over the last few weeks, or will continue. But maybe someday we'll be able to, I don't know, maybe not shake hands, but maybe rub elbows again and see all of our friends that are volunteers, and then as importantly, just be able to open those doors and greet people as they come through them. Because I think it's going to be a time for celebration for everybody.
Yeah, very well said. I agree and hope that is the case, and that it happens sooner rather than too much later. I think as well, this experience of being connected online and being able to connect with people from around British Columbia has been really satisfying too. So I think hopefully we will find ways to continue connecting and have opportunities for people to join us and to hear the experts and to join the conversation and to share their voices, even if they can't physically be at the museum. So I'm not suggesting that for your volunteer meetings, but maybe their Zoom will continue in your lives for some of those volunteer meetings and gatherings, so more voices can hear and to participate. We have a lovely turnout today in our chat window. I have a feeling quite a few people in there might be volunteers, if not with the museum in some way. I think there's an option to raise your hand. You have that option if you're watching. If you do, if you can raise your hand, and we'll see if how many hands go up to say if you do volunteer, be it at the museum or somewhere else. Oh my goodness, I think the whole wall lit up. Wow. Yep, about, my goodness, almost 50 some hands just went up there to say they volunteer. And I recognize quite a few names from the museum, and we do miss you. And it's, I think that's, again, one of the things we're looking forward to is just seeing our friends, really, who are the volunteers, who are the people working at the museum and in the different areas there. It was so nice to have you all there. Just a couple of comments. It's thank you to all volunteers for all your work. It's been great hearing about the different kinds of experiences you've had working at the museum. Thank you, Shannon, for sharing that. And yes, we're also looking just in getting back to regular hosting as well as the other duties we do. Because our lives have changed, I want to share one thing before we go. Our session here is just about to end. Holly, maybe I'll give you, is there anything else you wanted to add or say before we end our session?
Yeah, I'll keep this really brief. I'm noticing a lot of applicants I've spoken to recently. That's something else that's still going on. I'm still interviewing people who are interested in applying, and I encourage people to keep doing that. We're fortunate enough that we receive about 250 applications a year on average. That's sort of up at our high end. And our volunteer our group represents ages 4.5 to over 90. So we really truly have every generation represented in our volunteer family.
Yeah, 4.5. If you haven't had a chance yet, you can check out a social media post the museum made about our youngest volunteer, Nova. I wanted to share before we go just my page here to let you know about a brand new program at the museum, because our lives are changing right now. So many of you will recognize the museum's homepage here. And if you scroll down the homepage, we are interested in your stories of what's happening with COVID-19. So you can follow that link, and it takes you to a new page, just went up, that asks you to tell us your COVID-19 stories. So there are ways to get engaged there. There's an email site, so you can send us an email and tell us what you think should be captured for the future. And what is the best stories to tell future generations about what we're going through now? How's your I'm thinking of my calendar at home. We have a calendar on the wall, and it's blank this month. It's so different from any other calendar page. We're not looking for objects right now. We're not at work yet, so we're not looking for you to send us things, but to send your ideas and thoughts would be wonderful. So you can find that on the museum's page. You can also find areas for more videos. All of these RBCM at Homes have been recorded and are on the Royal BC Museum's YouTube channel, and other pieces there as well. There's the learning portal for continued learning. And if you have young people in your lives, we have a program on Wednesdays called RBCM at Home Kids, where a museum educator hosts different staff members, and they have hands-on activities to share and help pass the time. And RBCM at Home Outside, that's going to happen tomorrow at 2 p.m. Dr. Ken Marr is going to take us on a tour of the native plant garden. So lots of ways to still engage until we can all be back together again. And so while we wait for better times, we're really happy to have this way to engage with you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will stop the recording, and we'll end our Facebook session now. However, if you would like to